Today's video, we're going to be having a look at the Hasbro Marvel Legends Toys R Us exclusive Spider-Man's Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. For fans of the Wall Crawler will know his first appearance was from Amazing Fantasy number 15 back in 1962. Mary Jane, on the other hand, first debuted in Amazing Spider-Man number 25 back in June 1965. To get some dimensions going, Mary Jane stands a little over 6 inches tall. Meanwhile, Spider-Man stands at 6.5 inches tall. Because Mary Jane really was the main reason why I wanted to get this exclusive set, we'll have a look at her first. She comes with a purse as her accessory, which actually has some decent enough sculpt. They've even gone ahead and sculpted the stitch work around the outer perimeter of the purse, where the flap folds over, and certainly on the back. A little small little detail, but I do appreciate that they put that in there. You've got the gold of the adjustment strap here, the actual buckle portion of it. And all around it actually looks really good. I really wouldn't expect for a ton of different accessories for someone like Mary Jane. I guess a purse, you know, it's something that she could be displayed with. You can fit it really on either one of her shoulders. It doesn't really matter which is which. And you will probably want to see yourself putting it underneath her hair, just so it doesn't sit over top. And, you know, again, looks good. I really wouldn't expect a whole ton of different accessories for her, so, you know, for a purse, it's not all that bad. One of the things, too, if you watch this channel religiously, thank you for that, by the way, you'll probably see that sometimes with the Marvel Legends stuff, I get them a little bit later. That's actually because Canada now has just started to see a lot of these hit store shelves. Specifically, Toys R Us has now started stocking these, so I was a little bit behind, but I didn't want to pay eBay prices, which is sometimes what I end up having to do. Here in Canada, if you're picking up like figures, say from a U.S. seller, you're having a look at basically the conversion rate of any figure, plus shipping, plus any sort of brokerage fees that may cost with having the figure essentially shipped over. So like this set, for example, I think was at Toys R Us for I want to say like $54.99 or so, which basically breaks down to about $25 a piece for these figures. Now, if say that same price was maybe say on the likes of eBay, that $54 or probably be closer to $40 or so would be converted over with your shipping, with your brokerage. These figures probably would be closer around $80. I kid you not. So a lot of times, unfortunately, that usually means why I may seem a little later actually reviewing these. It's just basically because I just don't want to pay the US prices of having stuff shipped over. Thank goodness, though, Toys R Us finally stocked these because I really was anxious to get a Mary Jane in my collection. And I have to say, in all honesty, the figure looks really good. I'm sure to no coincidence, she does bear an uncanny likeness to Emma Stone, which right off the bat, I don't still understand why. I know the chemistry was good between her and Andrew Garfield, but I still understand why they cast her as Gwen Stacy when clearly, I mean, she would have fit both roles perfectly fine, but clearly she's made to play Mary Jane. The likeness on Mary Jane and Emma Stone is uncanny, and again, I can't help but think the sculptors sculpting a Mary Jane did not simply just sculpt it based on Emma Stone's likeness. The freckles on her face are done quite nicely. She is actually one of the most beautiful female Marvel Legends sculpts I've seen in a very, very long time. The only thing I really would say, even though the sculpt is good, the paint is good, I kind of wish that there was maybe a little bit more of a smile on her face. Her face seems so serious. It's okay, Mary Jane, it's okay. I wish that she had maybe just a little bit of a smirk or just a little peek of a smile. That, I think, could have gone a long way. Instead, she gets, again, such a very serious-looking face on her. The hair's done quite nicely as well, incorporating some nice darker reds, which as you can see transition quite nicely from the darker shade of red to the lighter shade that makes up the majority of the top of her head. But again, just a fantastic head sculpt. For her outfit, it's pretty much scaled down to like a t-shirt, a black shirt, and a pair of like acid, like bleached washed jeans. Like there's a little bit of that acid. There's a bit of like a wear or a lighter shade on the top of the jeans rather than say like on the back of the jeans. The sculpting on the pockets and everything is noted there as well. Even like the little looplets where the belt would basically feed itself through have been done here. And actually it looks quite good. The feet to the shoes becomes a little bit questionable because you can see where they've clearly just painted the flesh portion over top of the plastic. So in some instances, like the shoes don't really have a real defined line around them. Instead, it kind of just looks like it's a blending of the two. It actually also makes her feet look a little on the swollen side because it's basically, there's no stop where the shoe is and then the foot. It's one continuous sculpt. That's a very small little nitpick because like the sculpt again on the jeans, you can see like little areas where the denim has stretched itself around areas such as her lower calves. And again, like just a really great looking sculpt all around. Posability on Mary Jane, her head rotates all the way around. And surprisingly, I thought her hair might be a hindrance. It really isn't as much as I thought it might be. The arms hinge outwards, full rotation all the way around. She has a bend in the elbow, as well as a rotation in the forearm, and a rotation and hinge in the hand. While she doesn't have an upper torso crunch, she has, however, a very generous ball joint that allows full rotation going on in the top torso. The lower legs, luckily, rely on newer articulation, so they're not hindered at all where I have to worry about swiveling the leg and bringing the leg forward, swiveling the leg, and so on and so forth. A very, very fluid motion in the legs. She has a swivel, basically a swivel in the top cut of her thigh. A very, very nice double hinge on the knee. And she does also have a hinge and ankle pivot in her feet. One thing I do want to mention before we get to Spider-Man is her hands. This is a little bit of a, yeah, okay, sure. I don't get why her hand is like this. I mean, obviously they're making use of an existing sculpt. I think Jean Grey used this same hand. You know, again, it could be her reaching out for Spider-Man. It just seems like it's a forced sculpt. Almost a pair of relaxed hands would be a little bit easier for me to kind of digest. As really, I feel like the two hands compete with one another. One hand is really like a clenched fist, while the other hand is reaching outward. Sure, you could say, well, she's reaching out for Spider-Man. I don't know. But it seems to me, I would have almost even more been favoring a very relaxed female hand, as opposed to a very exaggerated gestured hand like this. Now, you could also say, too, that if you take, for example, her purse, and we just bend the arm here just to get her hand through the loop. There we go. You could say, well, you know, at least the hand would allow you to kind of hold her purse. But it doesn't really even hold it as much as you can kind of put your thumb over top of it, or her thumb over top of it. But then it seems like her hands are just unnecessarily exaggerated here. I don't know. That's a very small little added, probably a little patoib that I was a little bothered by with the figure. I'm still not sure how I really like the hands. The hands are about the only thing I would probably change on the figure. I would, again, favor, I think, more a pair of relaxed palms as opposed to the exaggerated hand and the fist. That being said, let's have a look at Spider-Man, which probably you've gotten yourself a dozen Spider-Mans by now, so maybe you're in the same mindset as me. You might probably getting the set more so for the Mary Jane. Spider-Man actually looks pretty good, though, I have to admit. Still using the awfully malnourished body mold for Spider-Man. I kind of wish that they will tweak this at some point, giving a little bit extra filling to Spider-Man's lower torso. The paint is actually quite clean, and equally so, I have to say that the web is nicely presented here, with Spider-Man having a more raised elevation to his boots rather than the more traditional design. He's got the glowing spider emblem there, as well as a little bit extra of that shading in his eyes that breaks up the more mundane designs of Spider-Man, where if you've maybe picked up this figure before, it entertains the idea of probably picking him up this time and not simply just being, well, I'm picking it up specifically for her. The emblem on the back is done nice. Panel lining as well around basically all the areas that are red. The webbing is very clean. The very sharp divide of red to blue is cut off quite nicely by that panel lining in black. And again, everything on it, it looks very clean, which I will say is a plus. Again, you may already have a Spider-Man similar to this, but they've mixed it up slightly just so that, you know, you've got a little extra mileage for picking up this Spider-Man above and beyond just, well, I'm getting it for Mary Jane over there. He does, of course, have an alternate head sculpt, which is, again, a little added bonus. You can go ahead and pop the head off, replace it with Peter Parker's head, which we will just pop onto the very, very large ball joint. There we go. And actually, in packaging, this is how they're presented. I also know that for a fact, too, because I went to Toys R Us, and when I picked up this set, I found not one, but two variations of this set that had been returned with clearly a non-Peter Parker head sculpt inside. One of which I think was one of the alternate heads that came in the Shield pack. I can't remember what the other one was, but clearly they were not Peter Parker. And I wonder if anybody putting these back on the shelf, I mean, obviously somebody returning it is one thing. The person on the other end of the desk is not going to know, okay, that's not Peter Parker's head. But anyone putting that onto a shelf would have seen 3 or 4 of these sets behind it and not looked at it and said, hey, wait a minute, that's a different Peter Parker head than the one that's actually in the packaging. But then again, you know, part-time staff, who really cares? They don't care. If anything, they're probably chuckling to themselves that someone pulled one over on one of their staff and returned something that clearly did not look like Spider-Man. But the head sculpt actually is quite nice on him. It's so nice, in fact, I would probably entertain the idea of keeping this as the permanent head sculpt for when I display this figure and leaving the Spider-Man mask head completely off altogether. The hair sculpt is done quite nicely. Again, you got a little bit of smirk, which is something that I wish was afforded to Mary Jane. Very, very clean. It does look like it's a little too big for his body, but I mean, judging by the fact, the proportions of what he is at his age, it would make sense. Obviously, his other head is a little bit big as well, but it does seem a little too big, just a hair bit bigger. It comes with also a ton of different interchangeable hands. Currently, I've just got a more extended hand, but it does also have another one of those that you can put on either sides, either arms. He's also got a pair of web shooting hands, which I just so happen to have in this hand socket. And he's also got a pair of closed fists. This is probably one of the most boring hands that somebody would ever want to display on Spider-Man. If anything, is there anybody that would display? I guess there are. There are some people that would just pose a very stoic Spider-Man. Maybe standing on top of something with closed fists. I don't know. His posability, though, his head rotates all the way around. A hinge up and down. He's got the forward and back shoulder crunches, if you want to call them that. He's also got the ball joints, or basically universal joints that sit inside those sockets. So it's still, on top of that, you get the full rotation going on in the arms. Move the figure around. He's got a swivel in the bicep. He has a nice double hinge on the elbow. He doesn't have anything in the forearm. However, the hands do rotate and hinge back and forth. He has the upper torso crunch, which I find is a little loose on this figure, just a hair loose. He also has a swivel in the waist, forward and back motion and split on the legs, a swivel on the top cut of the thigh, double hinge on the knee, and not only does he have a hinge back and forth on his very duck-billed shaped feet, but he does also have that ankle pivot if people like the ankle rockers. The Marvel Legends series, Toys R Us exclusive Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson, is a really fun set. The draw for me, of course, is picking up the Mary Jane above getting really another Spider-Man, but I have to admit that at least they gave Spider-Man enough of a variation of costume that was warranting at least having him displayed yet again. Also, an interchangeable head sculpt featuring Peter Parker's likeness can certainly go a long way of mixing it up a bit, so it's not always the same Spider-Man. As for Mary Jane is a beautiful looking figure. I kind of wish, though, she had a little bit more of a playfulness, though, expressed in her face. The more stern Mary Jane is okay, but when I think Mary Jane, I always think of the more playful, caring, fun-loving Mary Jane that, you know, again, that's the Mary Jane I think of more so. Still, it's a great looking set. Unfortunately, it took a little longer to get here in Canada, but was well worth it, I think, for what type of figures we ended up getting in this. Today, once again, we were having a look at the Toys R Us exclusive Mary Jane and Spider-Man, and it was also a Toys R Us exclusive. If you guys like this video, certainly hit it with a like down below. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that little subscribe button down below. You won't miss a beat when it comes to future videos. As well, if Marvel Legends is your cup of tea and you think this channel doesn't do nearly enough Marvel Legends, what I would say is go and check out my Marvel Legends playlist. You'd be actually surprised probably to find that I've done a whole ton of different Marvel Legends reviews in the past. Tons of different waves, tons of different Build-A-Figures. Check out that playlist when you get a chance. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. See you next time.